So this is going to be a fun session. NJ was with us last year, so those of you that were here are going to hear a little bit of a different part of the story. I met Liz at one of our recent dinners, and Nisha has been kind of part of the GELF community for a long time. And, you know, as I was kind of looking through the speakers and, okay, who mentioned, it's like, wait a second, these are all influencers. So what better way to kind of follow up the Bamboozer session than to bring some folks up that have been leaders in their own perspectives for quite some while. Obviously, NJ, you're one of the founding partners. I'll let you introduce yourself here in a second. Liz is also a founder, and Nisha has been running PR and partnerships, I think, since like the beginning of influencer marketing, before it was even called influencer marketing. So what we wanted to do today really was kind of continue on with this scaling conversation. But as you heard in the last session, this whole idea of building a direct connection. You heard throughout the first couple sessions, how do you build trust? How do you build loyalty? And I think the other piece of this is, okay, well, how do you scale this? And yes, we've seen, in fact, the Bamboozer guys have a great demo that you can check out where they've actually got a client in the Nordic region who is actually building a studio in-house where their customer service people are doing more than just what we called customer service back in the day. They're really creating these one-to-one connections. So that's a little bit of what we wanted to talk about today. What I thought we'd do is just kind of have you guys introduce yourselves. We'll talk a little bit about your background, where you guys have been selling internationally, and then we're going to pause a little bit on a kind of a data slide that looks at the customer. And we're trying to get this idea of, you know, what is the new customer journey? What's the post-pandemic shopper? Then we'll talk a little bit about SMS and email marketing. So as I mentioned, in New York, we started by looking at search and performance marketing. The dive today is a little bit more into SMS, and we'll have a case study that NJ will share with us. Then we'll talk a little bit about influencer marketing. So, NJ, why don't you say hello, introduce yourselves.
Hi, everybody. I'm NJ Falk. I'm the managing partner of APL, Athletic Propulsion Labs. We were founded in 2009 and launched with our Concept One basketball shoe with our patented load and launch technology that was banned by the NBA, became the #1 story in the world, 17th most searched Google term, and then we went into men's and women's running in 2014, and we've expanded from there into cross-training shoes, and we are really the innovators and pioneers of luxury performance in the men's and women's athletic market.
Amazing. Hi, my name is Liz Kennedy. I am the founder and CEO of Beauty Magnet. I patented and trademarked the world's only essentially Swiss Army knife for women, because men have one and women don't. My background is television. I'm also a licensed esthetician, so I'm very heavy in the skin space on TV as well as social media.
Hi guys, I'm Nisha Oza. I'm the head of PR and partnerships at COS, plant-based nutrition brand founded in 2018 by Alan Stevens and Tony Stahl. We're best known for our protein powders. We also have superfood blends, capsules, supplements, you name it, we got it. My background, I have over a decade of experience primarily in the fashion industry, so kind of in a new space now, exploring and bringing all my influencer marketing, PR partnership experience to the food, nutrition, wellness, fitness space, so excited to be here.
So wanted to start, and this is a Bain study that's come out. We'll reference it throughout the day. It's a great research. It does take a bit of a deep dive into the luxury segment as well, so we'll actually be pulling up some of these slides later today. But what I really liked about this one was just kind of showing how this, you know, we hear a lot about divisiveness and partisanship and things like that, and I think sometimes that's overblown. Yes, I think we do have kind of a more knowledgeable customer, and that was something that the Bamboozer conversation touched on a little bit about. Mike from PacSun was talking about, you know, what they're seeing with the younger, the more aware customer. So, you know, won't go through this piece by piece, but I do like how they map it kind of through the whole funnel of awareness all the way down through loyalty, which we continue to see as a key driver of success, especially in international markets. So just start with you. What are you guys seeing? I mean, is there any 2 or 3 takeaways, especially as you compare kind of your U.S. customer to the international shopper? What are you guys seeing as the big changes from a consumer perspective?
I could go first. I think one of the things that we've found through COVID and everything coming out of the pandemic is that the international market for us is growing significantly and that we need to pay a lot of attention to it, and that's exactly what we're doing. And we have to, and that's one of the reasons we love Flow and now the Global E and the whole integration, we're going through that, and how we have to customize to each country, each currency, but also have this dialogue with this consumer. And interestingly enough, that consumer has a higher AOV on everything and seems to have a nice lifetime value too. So it's something we're exploring in a major way.
Liz, you've kind of worked with people inside and outside the country. I know you were in New York recently. When you're targeting your segment, what have you seen? How's the consumer different? Or, you know, we've heard other people say, like, the one thing that we came out of COVID is, like, it seems like the customer journey almost became homogenized in a way, especially across markets. You know, it's like everybody was locked down, and then there's this shared global experience in a way. What are you guys seeing?
So we are currently not international. Our bread and butter is QVC. That's a lot of my background as well, and D2C, as well as Amazon. I find that the consumer, especially Gen Z, is really focused on where their dollar is spent. Their buying power, they know it's extreme, and they're very conscious of how they spend their money. And with that said, I think the biggest mistake that founders make is they don't have a presence on social media. People assume that you have to look or speak or act a certain way to have a presence on social. That is not the case. There are people out there that do not look like an influencer, so to speak, and they are absolutely taking their sales to next levels, not even expecting it. I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary. So the consumer is really, really focused on connecting with the founders, and they know that their dollar matters, and they're really interested in who they're buying from.
So the Middle East has come up as a topic, kind of a hot market we'll talk about in the afternoon. I know you guys are making some moves in that direction. Without getting myself in trouble, sometimes the Middle East is very different culturally.
Sure.
Anything that you guys are doing kind of to prepare as you kind of start to move into the Middle East?
Well, I'm in beauty, so skin and beauty in the Middle East it's crazy. That's our next, actually my partners are Muslim, so Saudi, Dubai, that's our next target, because beauty is that's just like a very organic, authentic way for us to go, but Nisha can speak to her space.
Yeah, so COS is not available internationally yet. We are US only, but speaking to some of the prior roles I've been in, and from the influencer marketing lens, I will say, piggybacking off of what Liz said, the customer now is so savvy. I would say maybe in 2014, 2015, 2016, you know, kind of the average Gen Z millennial girl would maybe follow their handful of 10 to 15 favorite influencers, and anything those girls wore or plugged or promoted, it was such an easy sell. It was such an easy conversion. Now, we're bombarded with so many influencers, so many ads, so many celebrities plugging different brands, and the consumer, both internationally and domestically, is getting a lot smarter. So one of the things in multiple roles that I've been seeing over the past 5 to 7 years is we have to decide, okay, what lever do we need to pull to stand out? Are we gonna now start offering those discount codes at 25% instead of the 20%? She's not biting at 20% anymore. With competition going up and all those sorts of things into play, and the influencer space being so crowded, I think each individual influencer no longer has that same level of pull with their audience in terms of the quick conversions. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this. Let's jump into a little bit of a case study. I wanted to set this up. NJ, you had done a really cool speak with the attentive people, so giving them a little bit of a plug, even though they're not here. But what I found interesting about this data point, and it's a really good study to kind of dive into this, kind of what we saw with the bamboozer, you know, it's like, what are they interested in? Well, it's this discovery, and you know, certainly everybody's going to be interested in discounts and new launches. One thing that we talked a lot about in New York last fall, especially with some of the other leaders in the footwear category, is exclusive drops and just, you know, really personalizing products, and that works really well internationally. But there's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes. Just like Catherine was saying here, it's like we're planning out, April already. So there's a lot of planning that goes into this. Why don't you walk us through a little bit about what you're doing with, especially some of the text messaging? I know that you guys have started in Canada. This was just a kind of a headline that came out of the study, which really caught my eye. It's like, wow, 80%. I know Caroline was saying, well, you don't see the 80% up there. You see it in this. So I guess my question is this a little bit more of a mature channel at this point? I mean, obviously you guys have been working with conversational commerce and chat and things like that, and we've all done email, and tried and true in many cases is good. So walk us through a little bit about what you guys are doing on that front, and talk a little bit about some of the growth you're seeing internationally.
Great. We were actually one of the early adapters with Attentive. We started really in 2020, even a little bit earlier. I mean, they really took off in 2019. And obviously, we started with the conversation with our US-based consumers, and then that statistic caught our eyes too. And we said, what would international expansion look like and growth, and talking to that consumer as well. So we onboarded and integrated with our Canadian consumers. So we have a separate channel for that and a separate chat for that. And now we've integrated Australia as well. So those consumers are actually getting targeted messages, a little bit more conversation. And the other thing that we have with them, now that we had it with Flow and now even more with Global E, is that we can have more buy now, pay later channels that are customized to the different countries that we didn't have before. We can also, we're learning from Global E what kinds of ways to balance the coefficients and how to really talk to that consumer in their language and how they're used to buying.
All right, I think we're back.
Okay. We expanded into these two territories because they were strong markets for us. We felt we should go into our strongest international markets first. And we're also seeing this enormous growth in the Middle East. So that's something we're targeting too. And that was kind of a surprise. And it's been really terrific. The other thing that we've done is we've actually timed and looked at our SMS and email drops to their time zones, especially at critical times of the year, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, some of our big events, huge drops, which we'll get into in a minute. And, we were surprised as anyone to see some of these markets really heat up and say, wow, we have to pay attention to this. And so we've had 22% growth in international over this past year. And our AOV is even higher, I think probably because that consumer is taking the time to shop, so they're buying more per purchase at that particular time. That's just a theory.
Well, like I mentioned over next door, they're talking a little bit about kind of, building the teams and things like that. I mean, how does it work? You've got lots of time zones you're moving into. I mean, it helps. It's a little easier in Canada and so forth, but once you're going into the Middle East, and you had mentioned you're hiring, people with language skills. It's like, finally the people that are like 4 languages can get into e-commerce now. The linguists are finally coming. But yeah, tell us a little bit about just how you guys are kind of supporting that channel.
Well, you know what? We started in the pandemic. We trained our entire retail team in store. They also are on our chat, and they also are on Fresh Desk with us. So a lot of them have language skills, and it's part of their position as associates because they know the product best. So they're contributing to that conversation. And then we have something like the APL McLaren launch and this partnership and a whole brand new silhouette. And because we're so design inspired by supercars, and McLaren is the perfect example, this ignited a global audience almost to the point that it was like the launch of the Concept One and our first shoe and being banned by the NBA. So it was really another global phenom. So we had to be prepared with that. And it paid off in spades. I mean, there's no more first drop shoes basically left. They were sold out on the McLaren. We have a second drop that happened. And again, we looked at these markets, talking to them and having the conversation. And this helped us expand our global presence. So we combined it all together, and it really worked so well.
So we talked a little bit about kind of localizing those comments, and Nisha, jump in here. I mean, I think like when I call somebody, and you get like, the person in Kansas with the dog barking in the background and the baby crying and things like that, and they're super helpful and everything like that. But as you're trying to support some of these more targeted, whether it's an exclusive drop or something like that, do you have to kind of like find the right voice? I mean, do you need the Gen Z person to serve the Gen Z? It seems like there's got to be some challenges, creating this conversational one-to-one dialogue. I mean, they got to have a little hip to them, I guess, but maybe not. And maybe the Kansas people are hipper than I think. I don't know why I'm beating up on Kansas. But.
I know, I was going to say,
Kansas is very QVC appropriate.
I would say all in all, the relatability factor now from the influencer marketing lens is really, really important. So as I was saying earlier, there used to be like kind of a small elite group of macro influencers or celebrities or VIPs or however you want to name them. They kind of influenced everybody by and large, right? Kendall Jenner has something, everybody wants it. But now, as these influencers from Kansas are popping up or from wherever, and they're gaining these followings of 2, 3, 4, 5 million, people are starting to find these influential figures online who look like them and speak in the same voice as them. So they're like, I want to follow the person who represents me and looks like me and speaks to me. I don't, Kendall's great, but I'm not going to copy everything she does anymore, So I think that that relatability is really important when you're putting together your marketing campaigns, your influencer campaigns. Who are you really speaking to? Let's find people that represent them and speak in their voice, speak their language, look like them. There's a wide array of influencers to choose from now. You can find someone to represent pretty much everybody.
To piggyback off that, so I get paid by some of the biggest brands, L'Oreal, Garnier, Lancôme. What I find is what they're using, women like me who have like a background in skincare, whether they have a brand or not, they use us more for brand recognition, if you will, not even for conversion anymore. It's because they want a certain aesthetic or a certain look. And for me and my brand, when I'm selling on QVC, they have their own set of influencers that speak to their community, that look a certain way, that act and speak a certain way. So it's really fascinating to see, like she's saying, how to tap into those different communities. You need to understand your consumer, you need to understand what platform you're on, and once you get that down and you get that magic potion down, it really, really does help. It's just, it's not a certain set of 15, 20 women anymore.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating.
And you also kind of now need to look at, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this a lot, but gone are the days, right, where, okay, if I pay this influencer $1,000, I'm 90% confident that her post is going to drive $10,000. That direct ROI is no longer there because it's so spread out. It's such a saturated game. So you really also have to look at, when you're building out your influencer campaigns, who's going to create the kind of content we need for our email marketing, whatever it might be, our website, creative campaigns, who's going to really elevate our brand and be an ambassador and a face and a spokesperson, elevate the brand awareness, and then who are going to be those money makers where like they do still have that sales and conversion power, and their followers that follow their move on the daily and their stories on the daily are immediately going to purchase something that they're wearing or that they're promoting. So I think now there's so many different things that you can use influencers for, and I think going in and quantifying that and making sure in your campaigns you know exactly what you're going after. Are you going after the best content? Are you going after just that it girl factor? Are you going after sales specifically? So that's another really important thing to consider.
Yeah, so Liz, we've seen, especially over the last couple of years, a lot of D2C brands coming. You'll see a lot of founder-led brands here. Help us understand a little bit about your advice on founders finding their own voice and kind of being able to, they're often the most passionate person about their brand. I mean, not unlike yourself with your business, and nobody's more passionate about the shoe world than NJ here. What are some do's and don'ts, or just some advice that you might have to help founders find their voice and project it through the social or the conversational channels?
So I'm originally from the East Coast. When I moved to LA about 5 years ago, I was working on the Steve Harvey show, doing a lot of beauty-related segments. And I came here not knowing what the hell was going on with social media. All I knew was all these women were like, you're in TV and you have no social media following. That doesn't work here. And I was like, all right, well, that's strange. That's not my world. And that's not really for me. I'm East Coast. I'm the business savvy person. I fell into TV by accident. I had one agenda: to go on social media, to build a following, to sell, and to educate. I actually ended up completely falling in love with the process. And a lot of the people that purchase my product or speak to me on a daily basis, I feel like they care about me more than some of my colleagues and my friends. So I really tap into my community to understand what they want, what they desire, and what really makes them excited about purchasing something. The biggest issue for founders is really not having a presence. And again, I'm gonna say it over and over again, it's so important. If you are a founder, you need to have a presence and it needs to speak authentically to you. What works for me, what works for her, it's not gonna work for you. You need to understand yourself, you need to tap into yourself and know what resonates with you in order to sell to anyone else. And that's honestly my best advice.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to put some slides up just to, give you guys some data on, at least what we're seeing about influencers and all. No surprise here, what's most popular. But what about for some of the, the founders that are selling the other category or the pets or something like that? I don't know if a dog can be an influencer or not, but puppies sure can. Any advice for people, especially founders, or maybe they've built a team of 10 or 20 people, but they're still the real driver, especially outside of kind of our comfort zone up here. Anything you've seen work or anything to advise people to avoid?
Yes, the best videos on TikTok, not just for myself, but we work with a company called Home from College. I would highly suggest writing this down if you're trying to tap into Gen Z. You can get incredibly affordable content, $20, $25, $50 from college students, every type of university. And it's really fantastic because they know TikTok and it's cheap content, which is really, really cool. But 5, 10, 15-second videos, sometimes even like less talking the better, where it's just a message and a sound, they go viral. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, TikTok, the fact that you can convert it to Instagram and then YouTube Shorts is fantastic. But yeah, the shorter, the tighter the messaging, it's key.
And as you start to, you go onto Amazon, you see a review, and it's like, well, that's a review from Germany or something like that. Is there some way, as people are maybe looking for this cost-effective creator content, is there some way to make sure that you're speaking the right tone as you move into different markets and things like that? Any observations you guys have seen there? Or does the consumer voice kind of resonate across markets?
The biggest issue with brands, and this is something I've learned from being an influencer and doing TV, is that brands like L'Oreal will give me this like crazy guideline of like a million things that they want. I'm like, I don't speak to my community like that, whether it's on TV or social media. So when you have a brand, you need to let the influencer or expert do their own thing. Do not give them a bunch of guidelines. You are hiring them because you know that they are talented. Leave them alone. Leave them alone.
I second that. I think that's really very important points. I mean, we definitely have, in our community, we support the community. We have so much authentic content that comes through, and we let them create it and engage them. And I think it also builds enormous brand awareness in the right way. And it's so engaging. And we call ourselves the APL family. We like to welcome, even in our conversational commerce, welcome people to the APL family. We want it to be a community.
Yeah, I'd say one piece of advice for influencer marketers, and you guys hit the nail on the head with that, be really, really buttoned up about your briefing guidelines in terms of the logistical things. So check in with your team cross-functionally. Hey, how long should this video be? If we're specifically contracting someone to do an ad, those things like, hey, the hook has to be dropped within the first 3 seconds. This video can't be more than 10 seconds. They lose interest. Make sure all those things are really buttoned up, but don't give your influencers like a super cheesy, hi, I'm Gabrielle and I love cost kind of script, because
it's not gonna work.
No one's gonna go for that. They're gonna tap by that. Let them be creative. You're hiring them because they're representing your brand and they're the right fit for you. Let them do their thing.
and make sure you're really buttoned up on the back end with kind of those more nitty-gritty things like, hey, if this TikTok doesn't get an average of your past, whatever your past 10 videos have gotten, you need to repost it again because the algorithm might screw you up a little bit, things like that. Make sure those are in your briefs. But with the creativity, kind of let them run free. Those
So in this data point where scalability, pretty clearly the challenge, it's really part of that is the process, just making sure that, we heard Catherine talk about making sure the planning is in place, making sure the processes are. Any other issues that come up with scalability when you guys are looking at, kind of how to take influencer marketing beyond kind of this one-to-one and really start to scale it, not just in the US, but as you kind of look outside the US as well?
I think one thing that's a little bit challenging, and being at a really small brand right now, I'm running into this a lot. One of the other challenges that we face obviously is rising cost of influencer fees. Those girls are making some money. So developing those one-on-one relationships with key influencers is really, really important because that's what's gonna drive your costs down. That relationship building is so important. I've worked with so many influencers where they charge $25,000 for a story set, and I'm like, I don't have that much to give you. Let me give you $3,000 and 15% commission. See how you do, and then let's talk. Those things take a lot of time. So internally scaling, and then you're trying to work with 200, 300, 500 creators on a monthly basis, it's hard to balance that along with that one-on-one relationship management. So I'd say that's a challenge.
Yeah. So given that we're trying to make sure the CFO is happy at the end of the day here, and we're profitably expanding internationally. What are some of the key measurement and reporting piece? I mean, again, that was a data point that jumped out at us, and I know that's something that you've gotten into the weeds recently. And again, we've only got 2 or 3 more minutes here, but yeah, just kind of start the conversation about men. I would love to hear, NJ, what you guys are seeing as well, because
Yeah, absolutely. It's a kind of age-old known thing in PR that PR is notoriously hard to quantify. And so we obviously are going to look at ROI directly. What is this partnership driving? And typically we track that with affiliate links and discount codes. But there are other really important factors to consider. How many pieces of content did this person give us? How many pieces of content did this person give us that we then leveraged in our emails, on our website? I've had situations where we've had failures in, we paid someone $5,000, it didn't drive that much, but then we put their content in an email, and then that email got an insanely higher than average click rate or open rate or whatever it might be. So I would say there's like that big internal halo effect that gets really hard to quantify, but ROI, pieces of content, looking at what those pieces of content have been driven cross-functionally, those are some of the most important ones. I would say brand awareness and things like that, obviously you're gonna be looking at your EMV, your impressions, shares are really important on social media now, I would say more than ever on Instagram and on TikTok. Those are kind of some of the main things that we look for.
Slow on the trigger there, but those performance metrics, is anything missing there? Anything jump out at you at that? I mean, engagement rate, how do you measure engagement? That's another 30-minute session that we probably would have to do next time. But
I'd say the main only thing I see there that I'd love to see on there more is content.
Yeah.
How many pieces of content and how is that content being used, which is again hard to quantify, but important.
As a lot of brands are scaling too, and with so many new emerging brands, a lot of brands in the beauty space are doing something really interesting. They're giving equity, obviously a very, very small piece of equity to the influencers that are just crushing it in terms of sales. And what I did with my board, because traditional PR, as you know, on the East Coast, like you're looking at $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month for really good PR. And my company has incredible PR. And that's because one of my closest relationships, I put him on the board. And I find that a lot of these agencies are now looking for more than just money. They're looking for these long-term partnerships and these long-term relationships. And by placing people on the board or giving equity, they really feel tied to you and your brand. And I think that's something that's not really discussed that much. It does not have to be a huge chunk of equity. Of course, that would be ridiculous. I'm talking something really small, but the results have been pretty incredible for my colleagues who have been doing that.
got it.
Influencers now really, really enjoy being memorialized, is that the right word, or integrated into the brand in some way. So special capsules, even, you know, if that's too high of a lift or too expensive, can you give them their own landing page and their own edit on your site with their favorite picks, if you can't do something as big as giving away equity. So I think they really appreciate that. And it's a
I'm
good
talking about like the
negotiation
influencers
tactic.
that are like, you know, like business savvy.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
You'd be shocked. You know, people have this idea of like what an influencer is. And it's just so, it's crazy. I'm like, this girl went to Yale and Harvard and I'm like obsessed with her and she's brilliant. She happens to be an influencer. Like a lot of these.
You're
these
a business
women
savvy influencer,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not on Instagram and TikTok because I'm dying to be an influencer. I had to understand the market and I wanted to be really savvy about it. When you find these people, integrate them into your business. Treat them as, you know, someone that's going to add value because they are.
All right, closing thoughts on this one. Again, this is something we started talking about 5 years ago, this whole idea that the tier ones, and we saw this largely when we had people talking about what they were doing in China, the kind of shift from the key opinion leaders to the, you know, the nano influencers and things like that. Any closing thoughts on what you guys are seeing? I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier, just this kind of, I guess, proliferation or broadening of the base. And you know, there's actually some other really good slides in here where they kind of map it over to the, you know, the pyramid and the different branding objectives and things like that. But any closing thoughts? Because I know we've run over time now.
I think I agree with everything they said. Also, is this incredible rise of the micro influencer that's happening, customizing when you're launching a particular product. Select that list of influencers who might be right for that particular campaign, and really looking at the customization of all that. We're definitely doing much more with tracking results, giving them actually not like specific guidelines, but more information about our brand or the expectations, and doing that in a very nice, proactive way. But they've done a great job.
Yeah, and again, conversation starts here, goes throughout the day. I know you guys are sitting down at one of the meetups later today, so thank you guys for that. Thank these speakers, everyone, and I'm going to ask the next panelist to come on up. But thanks again, guys. That was great.
Thanks, Kent. Thanks, everybody.